Hey there, if you're looking to buy a Gucci belt or a leather belt with double G's or the Marmont style belt, then you have come to the right video. In this video, I'm going to be comparing the different sizes of the Gucci belt, my own experience with the sizing in terms of the widths as well as the lengths. And I'm going to be doing a little side-by-side comparison with measurements and all of that good stuff. So if you were confused by Gucci's sizing guide on their website like I was, then stay tuned into this video. This video is solely going to be a guide slash tips and tricks on sizing. It's not going to be an unboxing video. We're not going to talk about packaging or any of that kind of stuff. This is going to be solely about numbers. But before all that, I'm just going to put it out there that if there is a Gucci store near where you live, there is no better way to get experience with sizing and exactly how the belt fits than to actually go to your nearest store and try the belt on. But if you're like me and you just don't have the time to go to a store, or you're just maybe a little bit too lazy and you want to order online from their website, then you'll end up relying on the sizing guide on Gucci's website in order to find the right fit for you. I have 3 belts with me today, and all of them still have their tags on actually, because none of them actually fit the way I actually wanted it to. So what better way than to kind of relay my little learning experience and to learn from all of my mistakes that I've made. So the 3 thicknesses of the belts I have are 1, the 0.8 inch or 2 centimeters, the 1 inch or 3 centimeters, the 1.5 inch or 4 centimeters. So the interesting thing is, though, when you're kind of converting inches and centimeters and talking about it in that way, they're a little weird on the sizing because the 0.8 inch and the 1 inch are actually closer to the centimeter guidelines than the actual inch. So I would say that for those 2 belts, it's better described as the 2 centimeter and the 3 centimeter. But for the bigger belt, it's actually better described as the 1.5 inch rather than the 4 centimeter, because the 4 centimeter doesn't actually quite align as perfectly as 1.5 inch exactly. The 0.8 inch and 2 centimeter as well as the 1.5 inch 4 centimeter belt are both found in the women's section of the belts. The women's section does not have a 1 inch thick belt. The 1 inch thick belt is actually found in the men's section. So the men's section actually carries the 1 inch 3 centimeters or the 1.5 inch 4 centimeter belt as well. The men's section actually has a lot more variety as well. I don't think the women's section, at least in the US, carries the silver hardware, but the men's section does carry the silver hardware. I'm gonna actually put on all 3 belts right now and do a side-by-side kind of comparison so you can take a look at all 3 sizes on me. I'm also gonna list my waist and hip measurements right on the bottom. After that, we'll go straight into the length measurements. So in terms of finding the right length of the belt for you, I'm going to start with the 2 women's belts first. So the 0.8 inch and the 1.5 inch, mainly because they have the exact same sizing guidelines on Gucci's website. So in Gucci's sizing guide, they actually split it into 2 sections. They have one section that talks about high rise and one for low rise, and mainly because, well, belts can be worn both ways for a lot of women these days. Instead of talking about both of them at the same time, I'm going to talk about just the high rise for now. So in the first column, you have the pant size. The second column, you have inches, which is actually supposed to be or assumed as waist size in inches. And then the last one is what those two numbers kind of correlate to in the Gucci belt sizing. And the Gucci belt sizing is actually just given in centimeters. The first thing that I'm going to say is to completely ignore the pant size because, you know, pants, depending on the brand, all have different sizing to it. I'm sure that most of us have experienced that we're one size in one brand, but we're a slightly different size in another brand. So it's not exactly dependable to be able to tell what belt size you should wear based on the pant size. So let's just ignore that completely because I feel like that can just cause more confusion. So we're just going to take a look at inches, which is assumed to be the waist size, and how that translates into the Gucci belt sizing. So my waist measured is about 29 inches, give or take. Based on that, and I look at their sizing chart, I would either be a Gucci belt size 80 or a size 85. Because what they have for 80 is 28-inch waist, and for 85 a 30-inch waist. And since I'm in between, I would probably be one of those sizes. Gucci does their measurements that's actually listed on that last column is from this point right here where that buckle is, where you're actually going to be inserting this buckle piece into the hole, all the way down to the middle hole of the 5 holes that they have included in the belt. So from that point to the middle point right here is what that measurement correlates to. So assuming that I get the 80 length sizing for the Gucci belt, it will be 80 centimeters from this point all the way to this point. So the odd thing is that 80 centimeters doesn't correlate with 28 inches. And I think that was the big throw off for me because I was looking at the inches section and I was like, okay, my waist is this size, so I should be getting an 80 centimeter belt. But 80 centimeters is actually 31.5 inches, which is a lot bigger. Of course, in any belt, there's more than one hole, so there is some flexibility there. But in a case like this, usually we want to be able to buy a belt with the overall kind of your measurement, your hip measurement or your waist measurement to be at the middle hole, just so you have some room to get a little bit smaller and still have it fit, and get a little bit bigger and still have it fit. So if they're telling us that, you know, the measurement that they're giving us is from the clasp to the center hole, then that should actually correlate with the actual waist measurement given in inches there. So I'm not sure why that's off. So basically what that means is I have a 80 centimeter belt right now to that middle hole, but in order to wear it high-waisted, I'm actually clasping it at the very innermost hole right now instead of that middle hole in order to fit my actual waist. And now the reason why I don't particularly like that is because I don't like having a huge tail trailing at the end. So when you tighten a belt and you put it at the innermost hole, you get a ton of like belt tail at the very end, and it's usually kind of flapping around. It's always at that awkward place where, you know, it doesn't fit into a belt loop because it's either too extended or it's too short to reach the next belt loop. So it's kind of just hanging out there, and I don't like the way that looks, so I would prefer it to be a little bit shorter. And for me, using that middle hole is actually the perfect place. So my advice to anyone out there who is looking at Gucci's sizing guide is to completely ignore the first 2 columns. Don't look at the pant size and don't look at the inches column either, and simply just take the centimeters given in the last column for Gucci sizing and translate that into inches if you know what your waist is in inches, and just use that as a guide in buying the belt. So now, what if you wanted to use the belt in both ways, both being able to wear it high-waisted as well as low-rise? Now that becomes the tricky part. So basically, Gucci's belts only has 5 holes. And like I said earlier, it's measured to the center hole right here. Technically, you can get it sized in a way that the very inner hole right here is your high-rise waist size. And then the hole that's the very last one out here is going to be your waist or your hip size for low-rise. Now that actually only works if your waist and your hip size are within 4 inches of each other. So if you're extremely curvy in your hourglass shape where your waist is super tiny and your hips are super wide, this just isn't going to work for you. You're not going to be able to wear it both ways regardless. Each hole measured center to center is 1 inch apart from each other. If you were 28 all the way inside here, the largest your hip size can be would be 32. So take your hip or your waist measurement and translate that into centimeters and just look at the last column of the sizing guide and you should be perfectly fine. For the 1-inch men's belt, their sizing guide is a little bit different, and in my opinion it's actually a little bit simpler and easier to understand. So for the men's belt, there's no high rise or low rise. It's literally just one chart with dimensions. How they break it down is Gucci belt size, pant size in inches, and then they actually have a centimeters and inches section, which is, I believe, at least as a consumer when I'm looking at it, I'm assuming that correlates to the waist size or the hip size or whatever. There's only one size for this. If I were to completely ignore the pant size, because that could vary a little bit, and just look at the centimeters and inches, it actually translates and correlates directly with the Gucci belt sizing, which is much more clear and a lot less confusing to look at. So in that case, it's exactly the same as the women's belt. Just find the overall circumference of the area where you want to wear the belt and have that translated into the Gucci belt sizing in centimeters. And there you go. There you have it. You have the Gucci belt size that you actually should be wearing. So that's about it for my guide and tips on measurements and sizing and finding the right size of Gucci belt. There were a few other misc items that I kind of wanted to talk about in terms of sizing. The first thing that I wanted to talk about is the size of the G's. I don't know if you can see, but there's actually quite a big difference between all 3 of the G hardware. It actually looks like it's exponentially getting much smaller or larger, whichever way you're looking at it. I have to say that it kind of does. And what I mean by that is it's actually quite close, but between the 1.5 inch and the 1 inch, technically you're only, your belt is about 0.5 inch smaller. So that should mean the G is 0.5 inch smaller, but it's actually a little bit more than 0.5 inch smaller than this G. Same thing with this small one right there. The second thing that I wanted to talk about was the length of the overall belt. I have 2 belts here. These are both of the women's belts, the 0.8 and the 1.5 inch. And I got them both in the 80 centimeters. So of course, measured from the buckle to the center hole, they are both 80 centimeters. However, when you line up the holes together, you'll realize that the thicker belt is actually longer than the thinner belt. So all the holes, the very last hole lines up right now. And if you can see, the thicker belt is just longer in general. It might be just like a proportion type of thing where, you know, if a belt is bigger, it needs to be a little bit longer in order for it to look good proportionally. So that about wraps up this video. I really hope that this video could help out some of you guys out there, because I know that I spent a lot of time looking at this and researching this, trying to find exactly what size I should wear. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, definitely go on to my channel and check out some of my other videos. Again, thanks for watching. Bye.